Recently, 2 Kroger locations in Clarksburg closed to make way for a brand new Kroger on Emily Drive. The company has stated that the downtown Kroger closure was due to a decline in sales and profitability over the past several years. But to many people who live in that area of town, the West Pike Street Kroger meant easy access to fresh food and prescriptions. One group that will be disproportionately affected is the elderly living in Kupel Towers.
On this end of town, there's a lot of people use that store, walk there. I used it a lot. Now we got to, outsource to get our foods. And it's just hard for a lot of people to get around, try to get there. A lot of people, some people use the bus system to get there, but then you're only allowed so much food on the bus with you.
Kupel Towers is a 10-story public housing apartment building owned and operated by Clarksburg-Harrison Regional Housing Authority. According to their website, their mission is to ensure that safe, quality, affordable housing opportunities exist for families of low to moderate income.
My very first thought was, oh my word, what are these residents going to do? That's so easy for them to go to the grocery store. A lot of them, don't have cars.
This end of town has gone through several changes over the past few years, which ultimately resulted in a lack of walkable food options. With West Pike Street Kroger shut down, the nearest grocery store, Price Cutter, is a 1.5-mile walk with poor sidewalk access. Baker says he used to ride his power chair to Kroger, but he can't take it to Price Cutter.
If the sidewalks in this town were a hell of a lot better, yes, I probably would. Because I've been as far as AutoZone on the other end of town on it. But it's just, getting there over the, bad parts of the roads is the problem.
The closure of the Kroger has thus created a food desert in that part of town. Britannica defines a food desert as an impoverished area where residents lack access to healthy foods. And the growing number of local grocery store closures across the state has caused food access problems not only in Clarksburg or Harrison County, but all across the state. A research team at West Virginia University has been created as a response to these problems, called the Food Justice Lab. Joshua Loans from the Food Justice Lab says one important thing to note about food deserts is that they're not natural. They are produced by political and economic decisions made within the food industry.
This is not just a Clarksburg issue. I mean, over the last 5 years, we've traced the opening and closure of grocery stores, and also went in and looked at whether the stores were owned by businesses registered in West Virginia or businesses that are from outside West Virginia. And what we're seeing is a trend of a loss of West Virginia-owned grocery stores and an increase in out-of-state food retailers coming in. So the question then is, how much do West Virginians actually control their food environment? And the idea is a locally owned grocer would have more stake in remaining open, even if it's not maximizing profit, because it's there also as a communal service to others. Whereas a grocery store like Kroger that answers to its shareholders in the New York Stock Exchange is not actually accountable to the people of West Virginia that have come to depend on it.
In terms of mitigating the problem in downtown Clarksburg, delivery services like Instacart are available in that area, but delivery fees and tips can tack on more than $4 to the cost of groceries. Taking the bus costs only 50 cents per ride, but according to Centribus, in order for folks to use the bus to get their groceries, they must limit what they buy to what they can fit on their lap and at their feet. Food isn't the only thing people at Kupel Towers needed from the West Pike Street Kroger. Public housing manager Sarah Knight says that when she talked to residents about how the change will affect them, a lot of them had their prescriptions at the Kroger. And now the closest pharmacy is Bayard Mercer Pharmacy, a little more than twice the walk.
The prescriptions, that's such a big deal. I mean, what if you run out of medicine? What if you've forgotten that you were running out and you're on your last pill for that day, and you have to try and scurry and rush around to try and figure out how you're going to get that prescription filled, who's going to take you.
Several studies over the past months, like one from Brookings Institute, have expressed concern for growing senior hunger during the course of the pandemic, as older people are more likely to require special diets and even just be afraid to get out during the pandemic. Even just on an isolation level, Knight says that having a place to walk to and visit, like Kroger, helps to keep a sense of normalcy.
I think COVID has caused such an issue for our residents that just adding that to it has, I'm sure, added insult to injury, so to speak. I think it's just been hard for them with the pandemic, let alone, their nearest grocery store going out of business.
Baker says he's not concerned with going hungry, but he's going to have to rely on his other friends in the building.
Because if I can't get out, maybe some of my neighbors or something is going out that drive, and don't mind picking up a few things here and there. We got to try to help each other. That's the thing. I'm just, like I said, I'm surprised they actually did close down, or at least not try to keep it open. Because personally myself, I know there's a lot of foot traffic in and out of that store down there. I see it when I go to the store because I'm there 2 or 3 times a week.
The past few years, the Food Justice Lab has been studying what can be done to ensure that West Virginians across the state have access to healthy foods. And Lone says part of the problem is that corporations have a lot of siting power.
There's no democratic process. There's no transparency. For all we know, Kroger was actually turning a profit, but not enough of a profit. And that's where, to me, it gets a little problematic that they would have just the power to disappear. In McDowell County, we talked a lot about the Walmart that opened and put a lot of other retailers out of business. And then 14 years later, it closed. So, what are the long-term consequences of structuring our food economy this way?
So maybe the people living at Kupel Towers won't starve. But all this comes at a cost to these people's independence at a life stage where independence can already be hard to find.
I've heard them talk about how it's going to be a struggle, to change their routine for getting groceries. A lot of them would go 2 to 3 times a week because it was super easy for them to just walk and come back. And now they're going to have to reconfigure how they're going to get their groceries, maybe just once a week, and have to call friends or family to assist them with a ride. So it's definitely not a small thing. It's definitely changing the way that they live and the way that they get their groceries.
For WBOY.com, I'm Shayla Klein in Clarksburg.